Welcome to episode 22 of Radio Omnicor. I'm your host, Colleen McClintock, and you're listening to the show that is guaranteed to teach you something useful and introduce you to an interesting and dynamic new guest. In studio today, we welcome Dr. Hilton Rudnick, Omnicor's MD, and Xenia Ayiotis to talk to us about her passion on mindfulness eating. She has a master's degree in languages from Wits University, and in 2010, she made a radical change in her career, moving into the space of mindful eating and coaching clients in her own private practice. She runs retreats and workshops and an 8-week program on mindful eating. Xenia is a professional member of the Institute of Mindfulness in South Africa and the Center for Mindful Eating. So welcome everyone to Radio Omnicor. It's wonderful to host you for this session. Zen and Hilton, as usual, in his seat over there. And Zen, you're talking about quite a different topic today for our podcast, which is exciting, but also trending at the same time. It really has become a buzzword, the whole idea of mindfulness and mindfulness eating. So it would be wonderful if you just started and told us a little bit about what got you to this journey, and maybe we can then kick off with definitions afterwards.
Okay. Well, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and it's my favorite topic, so happy to be talking about it. Well, mindfulness and mindful eating changed my life. For many years, probably close to 30, I was either on a diet or off a diet. And when I was on a diet, I was restricting and very often binging. And when I was off a diet, it was just permanent overeating. And I didn't know a way out of it. And then I discovered intuitive eating, which really changed my life. And I practiced it, and it really helped me make peace with my relationship with food and eating. And shortly after that, mindfulness started becoming a buzzword, and I attended a mindfulness conference, and I thought mindful eating. So I did a mindful eating course, and the two really complemented each other. So the way I describe it is intuitive eating is the bricks of the building, and mindful eating is the cement that holds it all together. You can do one without the other, but the combination of the two together is fantastic. So really, intuitive eating is a book, and it's a process, and it was written by 2 dietitians in America, Elise Resch and Evelyn Tribole.
That's right.
And it's a set of 10 principles that help you to get out of diet mentality and normalize your relationship with food. And mindful eating, there are quite a few overlaps between intuitive eating and mindful eating, but mindfulness and mindful eating incorporates meditation, breathing, being with what is, compassion, non-judgment, becoming aware of the body. I suppose that's also in intuitive eating. So the two are a great combination.
I think if we look at the statistics around obesity and struggling with relationships with food and eating disorders, we know that this is a major problem, not only globally, but also in South Africa. Do you think this is a method that suits most people? Or do you sometimes find it depends on where the person is at with their journey?
Yeah, it definitely depends on where you're at, because diet culture is so alive and well. In our country, in most countries, that's what we know. It's go on this diet, cut out that, restrict this, follow this program. Whereas intuitive eating, mindful eating isn't about following a program. It's really about listening to your body and giving yourself permission to eat what you want. But there have been research studies done with mindful eating. Well, the woman who started mindful eating, she started it in a Western context. It's always been around in Buddhist practice and philosophy. But she did the research on it, Jean Christella, and she founded mindfulness-based eating awareness training. And she did research on obesity. She did research on how mindful eating can help with binge eating disorder. So the research shows that it can definitely shift things. But really, your stage of readiness, you have to be ready.
Right.
So I think this is an absolutely fascinating topic, and closely aligned for me, the psychology of eating and kind of the psychology of money. People have deep relationships with the way they use money, and I think deep, profound, and often, from when they're very young, their relationships with food are established. And I think we all know of many people who have gone on diet and it works for a while, and then, you see them a year later and they're back to where they were. I'm interested, just on a very, very practical level, do you advocate intuitive eating or mindful eating as a method for weight loss, or is it something different for you?
Okay, that's an excellent question, because the Center for Mindful Eating has a position statement on weight loss. And the position statement, I follow this position statement. So just before I go into that, when I started out and when intuitive eating was originally written, there was a weight loss element to it. So it was eat intuitively and you will get to your natural weight. The authors have changed it. And it's now focusing on making peace with food. There are some mindful eating teachers, authors, who bring in a weight loss slant to it. But on the whole, and I follow the position of the Center for Mindful Eating, I don't promote weight loss because it gets in the way. It is this pursuit of weight loss and this dissatisfaction with our bodies that is the primary cause for eating disorders, disordered eating, a dysfunctional relationship with food, because you're always looking for your dress size to change, the number on the scale to change, and you can't make peace with food if you're constantly wanting, something to change. That's not to say that if you do eat mindfully and intuitively and you eat when you're hungry, it can result in weight loss naturally. But the research shows that intentional weight loss 95% of the time will result in weight gain and possibly more weight gain than the original that was lost. So, and another research study that actually Evelyn, the author of Intuitive Eating, published, well, she didn't publish it, but she shared it with us recently, is that weight cycling, so this yo-yo dieting, losing weight, gaining weight, losing, so that whole yo-yo diet cycle is far worse for your health, and it's actually can be a cause of death. And heart failure. So weight cycling is far worse for you than actually just living at a high weight.
So I just want to have a follow-on. My understanding is that with the intuitive eating or the mindful eating, you make peace with food and you're eating when you're hungry, and it's not all the abnormal psychology around eating for comfort or because you're bored, whatever, is not part of that. But what I would be interested to hear from you is how malleable are our eating habits? I mean, how stuck are we with our eating habits that come from our childhood, or how much plasticity would they have based on your kind of experience?
So, also, great question. Mindfulness really helps, and meditation helps with neuroplasticity and changing behavioral patterns. And the first step is awareness. So the minute we become aware of our conditioning, so that requires a willingness to explore and have a look at yourself and say, okay, look at me eating mindlessly in the car. Look at me, I've just finished this whole packet of chips while I'm watching the rugby or watching whatever. And just with this gentle, kind awareness, observing your patterns and then committing to change. But the thing is, if you are beating yourself up for your conditioning and your habits, the chances of them changing are not great, because you can't hate yourself into change. And that's where mindfulness is great, because part of mindfulness is compassion and curiosity and kindness. And through applying those attitudes to our conditioning, Because if you think about it, the first thing when we were babies and we would cry, our mothers would offer us a boob or a bottle. But our moms didn't know whether we needed a nappy change, a hug, or whether we were hungry. So from babies, we kind of are given food to soothe ourselves.
So Zen, I think you know my history a little bit, and I'm happy to share it because I think in the context it is quite useful. Being morbidly obese for most of my life and really been on the diet cycle, as you mentioned, and got to the point where I believed that maybe it was just maybe just like you're meant to be overweight, and they're thin people and they're overweight people, and I'd kind of got to that point of just, I think my 5th time on a very well-known weight loss program. I won't mention the name. You know how they do that whole weighing thing and you stand in front of everyone and you get a clap if you lose 0.2 kilograms off your earlobe, and all this was so humiliating. And I just kind of gave up after that until I came across, at the time, which was Weight Winners in South Africa, run by Maureen Kark. And it introduced the idea of what is even hunger? Do you even understand hunger? And I was like, what has hunger got to do with eating? And that was such a revelation for me. And I ended up losing 40 kilograms and maintaining it, and also being very passionate about it, as you are. But when people, especially overweight people who want to lose weight, hear the narrative, learn mindfulness eating, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to lose weight. They're kind of not interested in that. True. They want a solution to lose weight. So when you are coaching, how do you work with your clients so that they can lose weight and perhaps change their relationship with food?
So it would be unethical of me to focus on weight loss, knowing what happens and, seeing the research and how it will, result probably in weight gain. And I, at the outset, so most clients who work with me will have a session with me, just an exploratory session, where I explain this to them because it's such a new concept. So people don't really, some people know, they come into it knowing, but just explaining that this is a non-diet approach. It's a weight neutral approach or weight inclusive approach where we don't focus on weight loss, and I explain why. And really what we're looking at is shifting their patterns and behavior around food and teaching them what hunger is, levels of fullness. And, exactly what you said, Colleen, so many people say, gosh, I've never even thought of hunger. And the first thing I say, the 2 reasons we eat are that, the first reason is to fuel and nourish our bodies so that our bodies can live and so that we can exist in the world. And the second reason we eat is for the pure pleasure and delight of the taste and the experience. So, but the whole relationship with food has become so complicated. And I really think that food rules and diets and a dissatisfaction with our bodies is at the core of all this complication. So very often people won't work with me because I will say, I'm not going to look at weight loss. And, if you want to make peace with food and have, and let's see where you can get to and change and stop binge eating and look at doing things a different way, then this is for you. But if you're not ready to stop dieting and you're still focused on weight loss, you're probably going to be frustrated in this program. And yes, there are people who do lose weight. There are people who stay the same. There are even people who gain. But it's so difficult to, at the outset, see, what's going to happen. But the people who follow through and do the work and apply the principles, what they get out of it at the end is beyond weight loss. It's a sense of freedom, peace with food, freedom with themselves. It's like food is a doorway, and you open the door and it leads into so many other areas of your life. Like, Hilton, what you said earlier, money. Like so many clients who come to me, they find parallels between their relationship with food and money, and how you do one thing, you do other things. So the process is richer than simply weight loss on a scale.
I mean, maybe it's a good time to talk about the key principles that are part of the approach, and maybe just to sketch them
Okay.
Right, yeah.
So really the first step is to commit to this. I'm going to blend intuitive eating and mindful eating. So the first step is to commit to not dieting anymore. And to really realize the cost of dieting, what it's had. Or some people don't diet, they just restrict food. They create their own rules and restrictions. So to let go of the rules, to understand that, yes, rules, restriction create almost like a false sense of safety. But really what happens is we end up breaking those rules. The more with food, the more we try and be restrictive and rule-based, the more we're going to land up overeating and binge eating. So that's number one. Commit to not dieting. And then really it's physiological. Pay attention to your hunger. What does it feel like? Eat when you're hungry. Stop eating. And also, talking about hunger is this comes at a deeper level. Recognize other hungers. So very often clients will say to me, but I was hungry, and then we'd explore, and actually what they were feeling would be anxiety. And so anxiety is felt in the belly, and it's kind of quite constrictive, and it's your stomach like tightening. And so many clients mistake anxiety for hunger. And eating kind of soothes it. So recognizing the difference between emotional hunger and physical, biological hunger. Then the next step really is to become aware of levels of fullness. So what does hunger relief feel like? What does satisfaction feel like? What does comfortably full feel like? What does full feel like? What does stuffed feel like? Because we're not taught to connect to our bodies. As to where to stop. We've just got to finish the plate on our food, of the plate of food, because otherwise, we're wasting, or, we've got to get our money's worth and that kind of thing. And then probably the most difficult principle in intuitive eating is give yourself unconditional permission to eat what you want. Everybody, well, not everybody, a lot of people. So permissive eaters, you get two types of eaters, restrictive eaters and permissive eaters. So a permissive eater will take this principle and just think, wow, this is incredible, what freedom. I'm a permissive eater. So if my default is to allow versus restrict. So for me, it was like winning the lotto. Could eat whatever I wanted. But for many of my clients, they are terrified. It's like there's no way that they can do it. And then slowly you ease into it and say, okay, well, what foods could you allow? And so that one is difficult because it goes against everything we've been taught. And so this one is a challenging one, and typically what happens in the process is initially people will just eat, and I call it entitlement eating, because suddenly, well, Zen said I'm allowed to. So it's like, oh, I'm allowed to. I can eat whatever I want, so they will. And then we figure out, it's entitlement eating. And then you kind of, as you know that you can always eat pizza again, and, you're not going to cut it out and start again on Monday and you'll never eat it again. Or you can have cheesecake or whatever it is again. Then you kind of start relaxing, thinking, well, I can have 2 slices of the pizza because I can have the rest tomorrow for breakfast or for lunch, and things start normalizing. People who don't apply this principle generally struggle with making peace with food, and binge eating typically might continue. But eventually people do get to see that they can trust themselves around food, because the big fear around that principle is that they don't believe that they can trust themselves, because after many years of diets and rules and restriction, dieting takes our power away from us, and we believe that we need a structure that can kind of like the food police.
Right. Okay.
Well, I love the saying, and I think it was probably Janine Roth who she's written all those beautiful books.
Yes.
When Food is Love, and she speaks about food is here for the rest of your life. And it's such an epiphany when you have been a dieter for so many years, because it's just depending on where you are in that diet cycle, that food is available, it's not available.
Right.
And I wanted to explore maybe a little bit about your definitions. What do you mean by intuitive eating and mindfulness eating?
Okay, so the definition of mindful eating is paying attention to, so let me give you the definition of mindfulness, and then from that we'll look at the definition of, because really it was Jon Kabat-Zinn who's brought mindfulness to the West. And through working with him, Jean Christella created mindfulness-based eating awareness training. So, and his definition of mindfulness really comes into mindful eating. So his definition of mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. Okay, so all of those aspects play into mindful eating. So mindful eating is paying attention in the present moment. So with the intention of paying attention. So to your body, how's your body feeling? What's going on in your mind? What are you thinking? And what is going on for you emotionally? Because what you're thinking, what you're feeling, whether it's cold, hot, hungry, not hungry, or whatever it is, whatever sensations you're feeling in the body, pain, is going to affect how you eat. What you're thinking is also going to affect how you eat. And what you're feeling. Are you happy? Are you anxious? Are you stressed? All of those three things, mind, body, heart, will affect choices, triggers, and ultimately how you eat. And the key word here is non-judgmentally.
So that's a great segue into the way we live today in multitasking. Because to create the space to eat mindfully is a tricky one, because people are on their phones, they're watching TV, they're at work, on their laptops.
Absolutely. So, like so many of my clients, the minute, in mindfulness we say awareness cures. And once we start the process, and all I say is, okay, just pay attention to your hunger and pay attention to how you're feeling in your body. The next week, clients will come back and say, wow, I notice how I eat when I'm not hungry, or I notice how I rush through my food sitting at my desk, or I let myself get so hungry that I just grab something and eat it in the car. And so all this mindless eating that happens on the go and just through a lack of awareness, but just the simple act of paying attention. But, Jon Kabat-Zinn says paying attention in a particular way and non-judgmentally. It doesn't help that you pay attention and you're eating mindlessly and then you're beating yourself up. That's not going to help you change. It's to get curious and go, oh, look at me eating this way. I wonder why. And then there's more hope of you shifting that. Because what happens when you beat yourself up and judge yourself and say, oh, I'm so bad for, people often put themselves on the mindful eating diet, which is, I have to pay attention all the time. But, so just to notice and see, I wonder why. And when you bring curiosity to it, there's a kind of openness and you're more able to find a way out of it. Whereas when you judge yourself, you just shut down.
I'd like to unpack that awareness moment in like a real practical thing. So like typically I'll be sitting at the supper table and there's a delicious potato bake in front of me. I've already had one helping. And if you had to, on all rational levels, say, how are you feeling? I would have had enough. But the forces at work in pulling me to have a second helping outweigh any of the kind of emotional rationality that I have about saying, you just don't need it. You're eating it for the wrong reason. I'm far more inclined to have the second helping than to, I'm not sure if it's a willpower or something that would just let me stop there.
Okay, so the first thing is you judging it. You're judging your desire for the second helping. In your mind, you're saying, I shouldn't want a second helping.
Well, I'm saying it's like, I know this is unnecessary. I've really had enough.
Yeah, but you having that second helping for the pure deliciousness of the taste. It's got nothing to do with hunger.
Yes.
So no judgment. So this is how I'd work with it with a client. I've had my dinner and the potato bake is absolutely delicious. First of all, what I always say is eat the best first. It's very diety to save the best for last, because then by the time you get to the end, you're so overfull and now you've saved the best for last. So it would be, okay, assess what there is for dinner. There's my favorite potato bake. There's this and this. What are the 3 things that I love the most, or the 2 things? And if you absolutely love the potato bake, just give yourself more of it and have less of the other stuff you think you should be eating.
Right.
And when you eat the potato bake, be with a potato bake. So really savor it, pay attention to it, notice how it feels. And then as you're kind of getting through your meal, pay attention, check. How are you feeling in your body? Are you full? And then assess what's left on your plate and think, well, what do I want to end off with? Maybe I want more of the potato bake. Or maybe I'm going to have mostly potato bake and just a little bit, because you don't often have it.
Right.
And so there's that sense of, this is what I really feel like, and I'm giving myself permission to have it, and it's not something I have every night, and I'm going to truly enjoy it. But if you are meeting a second helping with resistance, and you telling yourself, I shouldn't, you will possibly land up having 3 servings. Because when our inner dictator kicks in with food and says, you shouldn't, you mustn't, why do you want it, you don't need it, that inner rebel is going to come in kicking and screaming and going, watch me, I'm going to eat this and more.
Look, the 3 helpings I can relate to. Absolutely.
So don't go into it with restriction. Just look at the meal and say, what do I feel like? And have I had enough of it? And don't judge yourself.
But there's a real element of, and I guess that's the mindful thing, of just being aware that you're eating and enjoying it, and not just shoveling it down so you can get to that second helping before something changes.
Yes, so Janine Roth, who you mentioned, Colleen, earlier, always says, just be with a bite in your mouth first. But very often, we're not with a bite in our mouth. We're thinking about the second and the third, and so just be with in the present moment, be with what's in your mouth, enjoy it. But we're so panicked that this food's going to get taken away from us, or we shouldn't, or whatever. And also remember with the potato bake, why not, if you've had enough, say, this is my second helping, but I don't want it now, I'm going to put it in a Tupperware for tomorrow. A lot of our eating is driven by fear that somebody else is going to take it, or there isn't going to be anything left, so we kind of feel we have to have it there and then. But you don't.
Yes.
And keep checking in. Am I enjoying it? So on a practical level, the one thing I always teach is, before eating, stop, pause, check in, take a breath, and check in with your body, check in with your belly. How full are you? How hungry are you? How are you feeling? Assess the food. This is what I call the basics, and we can put it in the show notes if you like. So breathe, assess your hunger, assess your food. That's the A of basics. And then eat with your full awareness and attention. Because when we're eating with distraction, we will eat more. Because our attention is not on the food, it's somewhere else.
But eating's often very social. That's where you're connecting with people. So the eating is often just a bit player in connecting with other people.
So absolutely. And what are you truly hungry for? Food or connection? Very often people end up eating more because they just want to carry on and sit around the table and keep that feeling of connection going. And they think that they need to cut the food, chew, swallow to continue the connection. Whereas really the food is an excuse.
Yes.
So once you get to a point of satisfaction and you've had enough, then it's about awareness. But it is definitely more difficult to eat mindfully in a social context than when we're on our own. When we're on our own, the problem is distractions, our phone, the computer, if we are eating with distractions. So I always suggest initially to remove distractions. Afterwards, you can, there's a Zen proverb which goes, when walking, walk. When eating, eat.
Okay.
And then one of the Zen teachers says, well, You can alternate it. But you need to mindful eating is a skill and a practice. And it's not about perfection. It's really just, sometimes you're going to be more aware than others.
Well, I witnessed a fascinating happening on the way into the gym the other day, which you would have it would have caught your attention also. So a mother was walking with a little boy of about 3, and he was eating an apple. And she was like, quickly, you need to finish the apple. We're going into the gym now. And he said, Mommy, I'm not hungry. And she was like, don't start with me now. No, it's an apple. We can't waste it. And I was like, oh, please don't teach him that. But he was so cute because he went in and he said to the lady at the turnstile there thing, he said, do you have a dustbin? And then he gave the apple to the lady, and the mother was so upset. I can't believe you've wasted that. You're going to be hungry soon. And the whole idea of the souvenir eating, and I better preventive eat. But he was so cute and feisty. And I was like, well, therein is the whole thing that we develop as parents for our children.
Absolutely.
When we don't allow them to trust their boundaries around food, and we want to start, invading that.
Yes. And children are natural, mindful, intuitive eaters. So, they kind of choose what they feel like eating if we as parents allow them. And they know when they've had enough. And that is why children can leave half a sandwich, half a whatever, and because they're just more happy to go outside and play. And then we as parents or grandparents get involved and say, you've got to finish your food. There's starving children in the world. And then they start developing guilt and they don't trust their bodies. And, in my workshops and programs, we talk a lot about waste and how so many people eat because they've been brought up not to waste. And how you've got to finish your food because otherwise it's bad and wasteful. But if you think about it, your eating that food doesn't actually help the starving people in the world. There are other ways to deal with waste. And what, in essence, you're doing by eating that food is your body needs X amount of food for energy. Anything beyond that, you're wasting in your body. So why is it okay to waste the food in your body and not in the bin? So we need to make peace with waste. If we can avoid it, great. But why treat our bodies like dustbins? And why eat if you're not hungry? So Janine Roth talks about eating for the hunger to come. And I remember when I was at school and university, it was eat a banana, you might get hungry later. So I'm hungry later. It's not an emergency. But I was terrified of hunger. And I would so often eat because I was terrified of experiencing hunger and, God forbid I'm hungry later.
Right.
And, it's also about making peace with hunger, that it's normal to feel hungry and we don't need to fear it.
And to understand what it feels like for you. What is it actually?
Yes.
Because it seems to be different for people. The
Absolutely.
actual experience of hunger.
Yeah.
In my experience, I found satiation the hardest skill to learn. So eating when I was hungry was quite a revelation. It was like someone switched on the lights. I was comfortable with that. But learning to stop when I'd had enough definitely was the harder one.
That definitely takes longer. So, and that's just practice and experimentation. So, learning sometimes, again, it's not a perfect process. So sometimes you're going to eat and you're going to wish you had a little bit more or you ate a little bit more. And other times you're going to eat too much and you're going to feel uncomfortable, but always to let your body guide you. And so the first step I always say to my clients is if you normally stop at full, try and stop like a few bites before full. And, it's about finding that sweet spot of you've had, enough and you've enjoyed the flavor, the texture, the meal, and you're also at a comfortable point because really the purpose of eating is to feel good. It's to feel good in your body and to also have enjoyed the meal. So if you're going to eat until you're stuffed, you're not going to feel good in your body. You're going to feel foggy and bloated. You're probably not going to be able to function afterwards if you're going to go back to work. And not that that doesn't happen, if it's a religious festival or a Sunday lunch or a Shabbos, you are probably going to eat more than you need, and it's okay. The thing there is not to beat yourself up, but it's about playfully experimenting with levels of fullness and where would be a good spot to stop. So for breakfast, for instance, most of us are not big breakfast eaters during the week. We just want to eat something and go, and that's kind of, we stop at more or less hunger relief. But at dinner time, we want more. And it's about having that flexibility to allow yourself to stop wherever it feels right for you. The whole point about this is not to feel uncomfortable in your body.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting where this whole thing has gone, especially in this world of like body shaming, and there's like clearly a movement where referencing people's bodies, or whatever, I mean, I'm not even sure what it is, but just like where there's an issue about people's bodies like taboo, right? So, but there's clearly people who are really, we would look at them and say that they overweight. And I wonder how your method or principles align with that. I mean, is it like if people are very large but they comfortable in those bodies, they're intuitive eating too, even if they might be overeating? I mean, are there any like boundaries around those things? Is there a point where it's like seen as that's not psychologically healthy? There's something else going on there.
So I follow the principles of HAES, which is health at every size, and it's a movement which is against body shaming. It's accepting of all body shapes and sizes. I mean, you don't really, in health at every size, there's a lot of research on obesity and around weight stigma. So, in the medical profession, they'll say, oh, your BMI, and there's research on that, which shows that the BMI is not a good health indicator. And really what health at every size says is that you can be healthy at any size. And people stigmatizing you and these kind of microaggressions of having small aeroplane seats, or people body shaming people, on aeroplanes and all of that. There's a lot of awareness around body shaming. And so the movement is definitely growing. And so it's, intuitive eating, mindful eating is inclusive of all sizes, and really what we're looking at is health outcomes. And people who are stigmatized because of their weight suffer more as a result of the stigma than actually the extra weight, right, if you call it extra weight. Because if you look in nature and you look at the different sizes of trees, different sized animals, different dogs, you get Rottweilers, you get Great Danes, you get Bouviers, you get Maltese poodles. So too humans come in different shapes and sizes. But, the health at every size movement has come, the medical profession doesn't make it easy, because, you go to a doctor and the doctor says, you've got a knee problem, well, lose 10 kilos and come back to me afterwards. So there's a lot of conflicting research and conflict in this area. But the whole mindfulness is about acceptance. It's about size acceptance.
So, I mean, having said that, I would imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong, that primarily the people who would seek you out are not happy with the way they're eating. They want to do something differently.
Absolutely. So the people who come to me, they have reached a point where they cannot go on another diet. They can no longer restrict their food. There are people who come to me who want to lose weight and are willing to give this a try and see where it goes. And then there are people like, I often have it where people say, oh, no, I can definitely see, but I'm just going to go and do one more diet. Just lose the weight and then I'll do the work. And, sometimes they come back, it's all about being ready.
Right.
And you just meet clients where they are.
Right. Okay.
What are the correlations between perfectionism and having this whole issue with food?
Huge. So a lot of the people I work with are high achieving, very successful, and perfectionists. And eating is the one area in their lives that they don't, that's kind of missing. And often, clients will come to me and say, I've done this, I've got 3 degrees and I'm successful in my work and I've achieved this. Why can't I get this eating thing? And really, if you dig under the surface, it's it's dieting primarily or restriction. It's non-acceptance of their bodies. And it's also turning to food for emotional reasons. But research shows that people who have dieted and restricted their food are more likely to turn to food emotionally for emotional comfort. And that's really because of the deprivation, seeking comfort, and, the restriction of food.
And what are your thoughts around intermittent fasting? Or is that also just another diet?
It's just another diet, really.
Yeah.
I mean, dieting now has a bad rap. So dieting falls under different labels these days. Under wellness, that's a big word. And then detoxes, lifestyle, that kind of thing. But really, it's just another word for diet. The minute, you got to cut out sugar or cut out this or cut out that, then it really is just another set of rules and, and another diet.
So at its simplest, the intuitive eating approach would be, I have a normal relationship with food. I eat it when I'm hungry. There could be food on my plate. I'll just leave it because I recognize that I've had enough. I'm only eating where I'm not eating because I'm feeling anxious. I'm not eating because I want to reward myself. I'm really only eating as a kind of enjoyment, but functionally really just to satisfy hunger.
Okay, so let me first go to that emotional component, because when I did intuitive eating, I turned intuitive eating into a diet. So because, my history of dieting was like almost 30 years, that I put myself on I can only eat when I'm hungry and stop before I'm full diet. So,
it's another diet.
Yeah. And I'm not allowed to eat emotionally. So in intuitive eating, the principle is honor your feelings without using food. It's the one principle I say, if you can do that, do it. But the mindfulness approach to emotional eating is, if you need to eat to cope, do it. But don't beat yourself up about it. So the mindfulness approach to emotions is really to accept and allow your emotions, become aware of them. So notice you're sitting at your desk and you're anxious and you're stressed because you've got this presentation or you've got this meeting where you've got to discuss the bottom line, and you're sitting there and you are really nervous. And it's like just to notice how you're feeling that emotion in your body and to be compassionate with yourself for having the emotion, because, what we typically want to do is resist emotions, suppress them, and to open up to the emotion. And accepting that, sometimes eating to cope is okay. It's a legitimate way to comfort yourself, because pathologizing it and saying it's not okay, it's a sign of weakness to comfort eat, doesn't help. So to say, all right, I'm having an anxious moment, I'm having a difficult moment, what can I do? Can I feel the feeling? Because mindfulness is all about feeling it, being with it, accepting and allowing. But if it's hard to, can I soothe myself with food and feel at the same time? And if you do choose to binge to numb or mindlessly eat to distract yourself from the emotion, what typically happens is we beat ourselves up afterwards. That's just a further distraction. But in that case, to just be kind, because really the reason you're eating emotionally, the reason you binge eating, it's a coping tool. It's because you're having a hard time. It's the same reason people take drugs, alcohol, overwork, overshop. It's we don't know how to be with the emotion. We want to numb it. We want to bolt, because as human beings, we really are wired for pleasure and wired to avoid any pain and discomfort. And that's really where food and all the other distractions come in.
So you're saying it's an addiction then?
No.
Okay.
I personally don't believe in food addiction, and the research is inconclusive. I do think, though, that the more you restrict food, the more addictive it can feel. Like I often hear, I'm addicted to sugar.
Yeah.
What sugar does is it releases the pleasure centers in your brain. But there isn't really conclusive research that sugar is addictive. But there's a lot on social media and everywhere that sugar is as addictive as cocaine. When you forbid something and judge it and say, I shouldn't have it, it kind of feels, it helps some people to say they're addicted to it because then they can label it. But I have found with clients who've labeled and said, I'm addicted to sugar, once they start allowing themselves to have it and see how it feels in their body and, then they realize, actually, I'm not addicted to it. What I'm saying is it can be compulsive and it's a tool. So sometimes, really there are 3 reasons why we'll overeat or binge eat. The one is deprivation. Restriction, control, willpower. So as Janine Roth says, for every restrictive diet, for every restriction, there is its equal and opposite binge. The other reason for binge eating is severe hunger and letting yourself get too hungry. And the third is emotional. Mm-hmm. And it's you experiencing a difficult emotion. You don't know what to do with it. You're feeling like you can't handle it. And so you binge to numb it. Or you eat to distract yourself from it. It's really kind of a coping, distracting tool.
So Zen, in your experience working with people, is there for some people, I guess, something that switches with them internally where they suddenly get it and their relationship with food is different? Or is it like a gradual... how does it work? So
it's different for everybody. For some people, and there are very few of them, it's what I always say to clients is it's a process. Don't expect you're going to get a quick fix in 4 sessions. But, I've had a couple of clients who it just clicks. They're ready, and in 4 or 5 sessions, they're good to go. Then there are others who it's a process, and it requires 6 months to a year's work. It's like seeing a therapist. It varies from person to person, and it really does depend on what's going on in your life, the level of stress. For people who are really stressed at work or people who have young kids, there's just a lot more on their plate. So it might just take longer. It also, their history with dieting and restriction and how ready they are. So what I always say is you've got to commit to a minimum of 8 to 10 sessions. Sometimes it's going to take longer. And rarely, but it does happen. It can happen in 4 or 5 sessions. But what happens is normally at the 4 or 5 session mark, it actually starts getting harder. And then people run away.
Okay.
That's interesting.
Because all these emotions that you've been using food to numb start coming up, and then this starts becoming harder. Whereas in the beginning, suddenly, you've got unconditional permission to eat what you want, and it's yes, and it's great. And then the nitty gritty work starts happening. It's great in that you make peace with food. It shifts a lot of things for you, but it's not an easy process. It's not for the faint-hearted. It requires courage and bravery to face your relationship with food, because what comes up with this is you realize why I'm using food. It's because I don't like my boss. It's because I'm unhappy in the work I'm doing. It goes beyond food.
Right.
The food and eating is a symptom, and there are very often other underlying things like an unhappy marriage or so many other factors, and all this starts coming out.
I can imagine that it goes really, really deep, and it could be intractable things like I hate my life.
Yeah.
And food is just something to soothe
and get pleasure from.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you have to be a real therapist in your work. You're doing deep psychology work.
Sometimes, yes. I mean, I do approach it from a coaching point of view, and if I see there's trauma, then I will refer on, and if it's beyond my scope. And very often clients who come to me actually are also already working with therapists.
Right, okay.
That does happen.
Okay.
So
My question was, when you hear the statement, this is who I am, and, I was brought up this way, there's nothing I can do to change it. How do you deal with that?
well, I thought that about me. I will always be a big girl, and I will never be able to, always want food, and I just love food too much. Because those were the messages I got from my parents. And, my mother was always taking me to dietitians and to different places to lose weight, injections, pills, you name it. And so I never thought that I would, I thought that was my life until, I started reading Janine Roth's books.
We love Janine Roth.
Yeah, she's amazing. Although she's received a bit of criticism because of her weight focus from,
From the weight activists.
Yes. Well, and people who kind of more follow a non-weight.
The Hayes thing.
Yes. So, but I still love her work. And she has shared a lot of wisdom, and she's put this, her and the authors of Intuitive Eating have really put the non-diet approach on the map. But yes, how do you deal with it? Change is possible. It's not hard. It's not easy. It will be hard. But, really examining those thoughts and beliefs and questioning, is that true? Could it be another way? It's really just asking questions, asking open-ended questions that, are you willing to explore another possibility of this being another way?
I guess a lot of the prevailing wisdom around eating is also the kind of counterbalance with exercise. And does that fit in anywhere in your world or conversations?
Yes. So in mindful eating, we talk about mindful movement. And in intuitive eating, it's, I can't remember the principle right now, but they talk about moving your body. But it's not about grueling workouts at the gym and doing an hour because you only burn fat after 40 minutes. It's not about doing exercise so that you can get weight loss from it. Because traditionally, when you look at eating and exercise, it's always been the one to complement the other for the result of weight loss. This approach is move your body because your body is designed to move. Because moving your body is good for your heart, for all your organs, for your bones, and also mentally and emotionally. It's good for you. It helps you deal with stress. But do something that you love. So if you love walking, if you love dancing, it doesn't have to be running on a treadmill. It doesn't have to be a grueling workout with a personal trainer. But if you like that, the only way you're going to sustain exercise is if you are doing something you enjoy. So when I was introduced to it, I committed to walking 20 minutes 4 or 5 times a week. And at the time I was in tourism and I was traveling a lot, and that was like 10, 12 years ago. And to this day, I still do that. So it's about having this minimum kind of baseline of exercise and not looking at exercise as something to get out of it. Looking at moving your body as a gift you give to your body, a gift you give to your heart, to your lungs, to your organs, to support your body.
Right.
So when you do have an issue with weight, it's a very painful issue, which not many people understand unless they've been through it. And with that comes a low self-esteem and a low confidence. And how much time do you spend, or how does this program address that?
So we look at, and this is hard for many people, it's, I can't remember who said this. It could have been Janine Roth, but you can't hate yourself skinny. Okay. And we're not looking at becoming skinny. We're looking at accepting what is, and can you accept and respect the body you're in? So people always say to me, but how can I accept this body? It means I'll never change it. It's not about changing it. The first step is accepting it, and then possibly change will come or not come. We don't know, because that's not what we're looking at. But we're looking at trying to respect and care for the body you have. Because so many people who are in larger bodies think, oh, well, I'm fat, or, I'm overweight, and so let me just neglect my body. But how about looking after the body you have right now? And what can you do to look after it? Can it be a short walk? And like manageable baby steps. And working on building esteem and value and self-compassion, because research on self-esteem shows that self-esteem really is linked on your performance, whereas self-compassion doesn't matter whether you've performed or not. Self-compassion is available to you, and really understanding why you are where you are, and that the culture we live in isn't geared up for size diversity. I mean, we have diversity in all areas, especially in this country, but the one area where there isn't diversity is size and body acceptance. So to promote size diversity and to really promote a sense of you are more than your body. Your body does not define you. What you weigh, the size you are, is not who you are. Your body is, and this is one of my colleagues in the industry came up with this, which I think is absolutely brilliant. Your body's not an ornament for people to admire. Your body is a functional instrument. And if other people are judging you because of the size of your body, well, that judgment speaks a lot about them, and also about the culture that we've been brought up in to see as, the media, thin as attractive and bigger as not attractive, and really about changing that. And that's, Hilton, we were talking earlier about Fat is a Feminist Issue, the Susie Orbach book, and really changing the way we see bodies.
Where is this all going? If I look at, I think you've also got you've got a teenager.
Yes.
You've also got teenagers. So I'm just wondering, where will this issue be in 10 years? Because with social media, it seems to be getting a lot worse. I think they're under a lot of pressure.
Absolutely. I see it all the time with my daughter and her friends. So Instagram, all the social media platforms are really not making this easier. However, what is present right now, which wasn't, is the body positivity movement.
Right.
When we were growing up, Twiggy was revered. I mean, our parents grew up with Twiggy, and then that was what we aspired to. When I was at school, you had to be a size 8. That was the size. At least now, there are tiny little inroads being made. I think the French fashion industry has said that models can't be smaller than a size 34. I can't remember what the size is. And so there's a growing movement towards body positivity, size diversity, and hopefully it will gain traction. They are also present on Instagram and on social media. So, our daughters now have... and they're fabulous TED Talks by models who, are also body activists who are talking about living in larger bodies. So it's available out there. When we were at school, it wasn't out there.
I don't know if we had this much pressure to be so... so perfect, because if you look at Instagram and then we put many filters on and all the selfies and the narcissism, that seems to be encouraging. But talking about the body positivity, it can sort of backfire a bit, because I was listening to the one teenager who was speaking about her confusion because someone had commented on her post and she didn't see herself as overweight at all, about how she's such a role model for this person because of all her body positivity. And then she was like, what does she mean? Does she mean? So it becomes a bit of like jargon that we then, manicure our language, but actually people get a bit confused with it.
There's a lot of jargon around the body positivity movement, and a lot of it is misconstrued and used in different ways. So yes, you're absolutely right about it.
So maybe as we wrap up, one final question. What would be the one thing that you wished you had been taught when you were younger that maybe would have resulted in a different journey?
Well, I wish that, I didn't believe that there was something wrong with my body. I wish that I believed that my body was okay the way it was, which would not have led to acceptance of the body I had, because it was as a result of not feeling worthy in the body I was in that made me want to go on all these diets, and that led to. But at the same time, I'm so grateful for it because it's led me to this work. But if I look at my daughter and young girls, it's like, just accept yourself and just shine and do whatever you can, and don't aim for perfection. And, there's that Samuel Beckett quote. I think it's fail again, fail better. We're not taught that. But the more you fail and the more you go out there and take imperfect action, the more we just taught that we have to be perfect and do things right all the time. So I think there's a lot I'd like to say, but really, I think acceptance of your imperfections, just acceptance of yourself as you are.
Am I allowed a last question?
You may.
So I think it's a hard question, but I don't know. I mean, what would you're clearly an advocate of mindful eating, intuitive eating, but what would its critics say are its biggest flaws? How would it be critiqued as a kind of principle or approach, method?
So it could be critiqued if you turn it into another diet. And actually, I recently bought a book. I haven't read it yet. It's What's Wrong with Mindfulness. So
okay, well, that'll be our follow-up session.
So really, intuitive eating could be critiqued around the unconditional permission to eat what you want, that it might be too permissive, and it's too woo-woo, it's too hard, and it goes beyond just awareness. Okay. But I think it is a hard question, and I don't know that
because there might be like a whole medical argument about
there could
genetics and stuff.
Yes,
that
there
would,
could be. But
okay.
Maybe we'd have to ask a doctor. But I think there's been enough research done on both mindfulness, so it is evidence based.
Right.
The benefits of it. Yeah. Look, it's not for everything. It's not for eating disorders.
Right.
Okay. So you further along, when they have people who suffer from eating disorders have recovered, then you can bring in aspects of mindful eating and intuitive eating. But in the early stages, it's really not. It's not for everybody, and it's not for everything. It's not the answer to everything.
Right. Well, I think that's what the new book is talking about, actually, and some of the criticism in the Harvard Journal around mindfulness has just been advocated for everything that's wrong, and they're saying it's really not.
It really is a support for a lot of things. It's not the answer to everything. It's you're still going to do what you can, and then you bring it in as one of the things that you do. But definitely the one thing I do believe is a practice of reflection, awareness, meditation, prayer, whatever feels right. Is grounding, and it can definitely help you, whether you're dealing with eating, whether you're dealing with stress, whatever you're dealing with.
Great. Thank you so much. It's been such a privilege to spend time with
you,
Zen.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Learning to trust yourself around food is a skill you can learn, and hating yourself skinny is not the answer. It seems to go beyond food. So what doorways need opening in your life to finally provide you with the freedom and inner peace you have been searching for? If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and comment, and check out our website www.omnicor.co.za for our blog and all previous episodes. And once again, thank you to William Irwin, our producer.